The exhibition title was derived from the blind leading the blind, which is an expression where, you know, the hopelessness of people who have no hope, leading other people who have no hope. And I kind of assumed that it would be more interesting if, you know, it referred to the procession of the damned, as in people who are undead or dead. You know, it's just a title. And people should expect to be thrilled by this exhibition. Monuments to Immortality are a series of bomb vests copied from bomb vests that haven't exploded. They're made in bronze, and bronze is usually the material used to memorialize heroes, so that you see these kind of sculptures of kind of soldiers and kind of generals kind of littered around cities. Monuments to Immortality are just bronze sculptures of the moment at which you know, someone's bid for immortality occurs. You know, they're kind of like they're captured moments in which you know, there's a, I don't really know. Let's talk about something else. Come on, we should talk about football. I think some people, you know, obviously the reaction to the work varies infinitely, but I think it's possible that the work has people engage with its kind of critical function, or people kind of laugh at the work because they can see the humour or the kind of the sinister side of it, or some people are morally offended by it. You know, so the reactions are varied and multiple. It's difficult to know, and I'm certainly not the arbiter of other people's interpretations of the work. The work is made, and that's for them to kind of, you know, that's their part of the kind of contract, I guess. I'm not really sure who the public is. Who is the public? Is it a kind of the official bourgeois elite, or is it a kind of a liberal elite, or is it a kind of the general public who are people who are not that familiar with art? So I don't really like talking about the public or the audience. It's kind of difficult to know. But I think in a more interesting sense, the idea that the work is not part of me once it leaves the studio is because, in a sense, the work of art is only an approximation of the artist's intentions. You know, it's possible to kind of consider a history of art that excludes even the people who made it. There's no correlation between the artist's intentions and the work of art. That relationship is completely tendential, and it's not evidential. It's impossible to possess the meaning of a work of art. So in a sense, you know, the artist is kind of like a work of art. If anything, the reason making art is interesting is because it deposes the artist. The artist is the least important element in the process. But once the work of art kind of is somehow finished, then it bears no allegiance or responsibility to uphold the artist's intentions. In fact, the artist's intentions are normally, you know, you can imagine a history of art that actually excludes the artist, and it'd probably be a more interesting description of the process of making art. I mean, upsetting and subverting, I mean, I think, you know, this idea that kind of art occupies some kind of countercultural position, I think is vaguely sentimental. I think the counterculture is the status quo. Counterculture kind of died in 1968, I imagine, you know. And as far as, you know, the possibility of a work of art, you know, kind of being critically kind of successful is, or at least I think you said something like upsetting people or affecting people. I think the thing about how critical art functions is that it draws people into a kind of a melodramatic pantomime that they actually are, they participate in. So when people are shocked by the work of art, they participate in their own shock. You know, it's a melodramatic reaction. You know, I think if people assume that somehow a work of art should be shocking, they fulfill their part in the exchange and pretend to be shocked. I think anyone who's shocked by art is probably shocked by courgettes. I mean, I think again, you know, it's very difficult to not think of art becoming a kind of weaponized function of bourgeois gentrification. So it's very difficult to see critical art as having some kind of purpose other than to kind of expand markets, to see it as a kind of a performative vehicle of capital. And so any kind of countercultural sort of ambitions that it has are sort of kind of embedded in this notion that that we use things like counterculture to express our anti-capitalism while still participating in capitalism. So we kind of the works of art which are kind of most abject, they act out or they compensate our sense of kind of revolutionary spirit whilst we're still participating in capitalism. So I'm deeply pessimistic about the possibility of art functioning in any kind of critical way, because I see critique and criticism as being part of some kind of dialectical sort of capitalistic motion. I'm not sure if I said I was anti-progressive. I mean, I'm just kind of trying to, I suppose that, if you place a question over progressiveness without assuming it as being the natural momentum of any form of activity, whether it's science or art or anything, the notion of progress implies that there's some end point to progress. You can't have infinite progress. Progress implies that there's some kind of civilizing process. And again, this refers back to kind of ideas of enlightenment. Enlightenment is an ideology. It's not a natural order of things. And so we need to kind of maybe kind of rethink what we think is a natural progression is a term. So what's natural about progression? There's nothing natural about progression. And also the thing about progression is it implies that there's some humanistic assumption that progression is good. You can have an enlightenment that could move towards things like industrial genocide. You can reconcile the notion of mass genocide, i.e. the Holocaust, with principles of enlightenment. They are absolutely, completely the same. So progress doesn't necessarily mean progress towards something which is kind of some, evolutionarily sort of positive sort of direction. I think the concept of nature is a kind of a very prejudicial term, I think it's kind of very difficult to define what nature is, really. Either everything is nature or nothing is nature. And if everything is nature, that includes everything which is kind of supposedly against nature. Atom bombs, pollution. Pollution is natural. There's nothing unnatural about pollution. There's nothing unnatural about climate change. There's nothing unnatural about the acceleration of humanity towards its own extinction. These things are all utterly natural. And once you make arguments for nature, why would you resist nature? Because if you resist nature, then you make that unnatural. It's unnatural to resist extinction. Beauty, I guess, it's whether you're kind of discussing taste or sensibility or a kind of a human proportion of beauty, or whether you're discussing a kind of a Kantian sublime notion of beauty, which is kind of like a comprehension a miscomprehension of the magnitude of matter and the scale of things, which kind of compel you towards a kind of a concept of death. So the sublime and death are the same. So beauty can be a kind of an overwhelming sense of imminent doom, or it can be a nice colour. So I guess you pick which one you want, really.